Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniele Rambelli, and welcome to my podcast. I'm here to share my story of resilience and healing after experiencing an aortic dissection, an ordeal that tested me physically and emotionally. I know many of you have faced similar challenges, and this podcast is dedicated to you. My goal is to offer a message of hope and support. In my book, I recount my journey from the initial fear to discovering mindfulness and spirituality as tools for healing. I'll share the techniques that help me manage anxiety, pain, and trauma, such as breath meditation and walking meditation. Mindfulness is not just about relaxation, it's about transforming our relationship with experience, pain, and fear. My aim is to help you find your inner strength, cultivate resilience, and discover your light even in the darkest moments. I'll show you how even a traumatic experience can become an opportunity for growth and rebirth. Join me on this journey of healing and discovery. Enjoy listening.
All right, get ready because this deep dive, we're going into some pretty intense territory.
Yo.
You guys send us excerpts from this book. L'ultimo battito, il primo respiro. La mia rinascita dalla dissecazione aortica. That's the last beat in the first breath, my rebirth from aortic dissection. And we're not just talking about some medical marvel here.
Right.
We're talking about how this guy's whole world shifted after surviving something that most people don't.
Yeah, what's so fascinating is that this happened on Christmas Day 2020.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a life-altering holiday.
Yeah.
But even before we get to his survival, the book opens with a real gut punch.
Okay.
The author's father died from the exact same thing back in 1999.
Hold on. So this guy's already living with that fear, knowing that it runs in the family.
Absolutely.
That must have just messed him up.
Oh, absolutely. He was only 27 when his dad died.
Wow.
And he talks about this condition as a demon haunting him, almost like a curse. And then it gets even weirder. There are these strange occurrences around his father's death that almost make it seem supernatural.
Okay, now you've got to elaborate on that. Supernatural how?
Well, for example, he mentions this girl who just appears outside the hospital, seemingly out of nowhere offering comfort. And then there's this professor that inexplicably passes him in an important university exam, despite having previously failed him.
Really?
It's as if some unseen force was at play.
Wow, that sends chills down your spine. I mean, if I were in his shoes, I would be freaking out thinking, like, I'm next. But, like, wouldn't you also be hesitant to believe in that kind of stuff if you were a scientific-minded person?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that tension between the scientific and the spiritual is a huge part of his journey.
Okay.
But fast forward to 2019, and he's diagnosed with a dilated aorta himself.
Oh, geez.
Talk about a ticking time bomb.
Oh, yeah.
He knew exactly what his father went through,
Right.
and he sent him spiraling.
Right.
Insomnia, anxiety, the whole 9 yards.
So he's living in this, like, constant state of fear, knowing his family history.
Right.
I can't even imagine the mental toll that must have taken on him. Did he try to do anything to cope?
He starts exploring mindfulness, trying to manage the anxiety just by living in the present moment.
Okay.
But then Christmas Day 2020 arrives.
Oh, no.
He's at his mother's house. The smell of Christmas dinner filling the air presents under the tree.
Wow.
When it hits.
Wait, so he's just going about his day and bam, this thing that's been looming over him for years just happens.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
This condition, aortic dissection, is terrifyingly real.
Yeah.
Imagine your body's biggest artery tearing.
Uh-huh.
Blood surges through, creating a false channel.
Right.
And it can be fatal very quickly.
Yeah.
He describes feeling an intense fatigue at first and going to lie down.
Okay.
And then it's like a red-hot knife stabbing through his chest.
Okay, I need to pause here for a second. Knowing this is a condition with a shockingly low survival rate, you're telling me he not only lived through it, but also wrote a book about it?
Yes.
This is already an incredible story.
It is, and it gets even more incredible.
Okay.
His family finds him clutching his chest in excruciating pain. He remembers very little of the frantic ambulance ride.
Oh, wow.
But he does remember repeating his name and the fact that he has 3 children over and over again, almost like he's clinging to his identity, willing himself to live.
Wow. Just the thought of being in that much pain and fear,
Yeah,
but still having that instinct to hold on to life is powerful.
it is.
But you said aortic dissection is usually fatal, right?
Right.
How on earth did he make it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And, while he's in the hospital, there's this other detail that adds to the almost mystical feel of his survival.
Okay.
He meets someone else who also survived. an aortic dissection.
Wow.
This person felt inexplicably drawn to him, like their shared experience created this instant bond.
You're telling me in the midst of all this chaos,
Yeah.
there's this moment of connection. Right.
This shared experience of cheating death.
Absolutely.
It's like there's something bigger at play here. I'm hooked already.
Yeah.
So he makes it through surgery. What happens next?
Waking up in the ICU is another ordeal altogether.
Yeah.
The book describes it as a completely disorienting experience. He thought he'd been abducted by aliens.
Abducted by aliens. Ooh.
He's seeing everything covered in golden dust. The people around him have these large eyes. The whole thing feels surreal. Imagine going through such a traumatic event
Right.
and then waking up in that state.
Yeah.
It took him time to even grasp that he'd survived this incredibly complex surgery.
So even though he physically survived, it sounds like his mind was still reeling from the trauma.
Exactly. He was dealing with PTSD, hallucinations, this constant unease.
Right.
He even describes feeling like the dead are around his bed, pushing down on the mattress, staring at him.
Oh, jeez.
It's a powerful image of the mental and spiritual turmoil he's going through.
And remember that detail about him repeating his name and the fact that he had children in the ambulance?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering when that would come back around.
Well, he later speaks to the surgeon who operated on it.
Okay.
And the surgeon remembers hearing him say those things over and over, even while unconscious.
Wow.
He was struck by the author's sheer will to live.
Whoa, that gives me chills.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like a delirious rambling. It was his subconscious fighting for his life.
Right.
Reminding him of what he has to live for.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I'm being honest, part of me is also thinking, this guy went through all this.
Yeah.
Survived against all odds.
Right.
And he still had to deal with the aftermath. That's heavy stuff.
It is. Survival is just the beginning of the story.
Right.
Now he has to face the long road of physical and mental healing.
Oh, yeah.
The fear of relapse, the scars, the PTSD.
And the fact that this condition took his father, so it's like this lingering shadow hanging over him. But you mentioned he was already exploring mindfulness before all of this happened.
Right.
Did that help him cope?
He dives even deeper into it after the dissection.
Okay.
It becomes his anchor, his way of managing the trauma and finding some semblance of peace.
Okay.
He talks about breathing exercises, focusing on his breath and his heartbeat, grounding himself in the present moment.
Okay, so mindfulness is key takeaway number one, right?
It seems like it.
It's something anyone can benefit from, especially when facing difficult times.
Right.
But there's another element you mentioned earlier that I'm really curious about, the role of books in his healing process.
Yes.
This is where things get really unique, right?
This is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
You see, instead of turning away from the difficult questions,
Yeah.
this guy leans in.
Okay.
He finds solace and guidance in the works of various authors, each offering a different lens through which to view his experience.
So he's not just reading for escapism, he's actively seeking wisdom and understanding from these books.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sneak peek into some of these authors and their ideas?
Absolutely. We'll dive into that right after.
All right, so we left off with this idea that books become like a lifeline for the author during his recovery.
Right.
It's not just like light reading, it's like he's on this quest for answers, for some way to make sense of what he went through. What kind of stuff was he reading?
Well, one of the authors he mentions is Tiziano Terzani,
Okay.
an Italian journalist and writer
Yeah.
who also faced his own mortality due to cancer.
Oh, wow.
His book, Un altro giro di giostra, meaning Another Ride on the Merry-Go-Round, resonated deeply with the author.
Okay, so we've got a guy who survived a near-death experience,
Yeah.
reading about another guy's journey with a life-threatening illness.
Well-
What, clicked for him there?
Terzani's book explores the search for meaning in the face of death.
Okay.
It's not about denying the reality of suffering, but about seeing it as a catalyst for growth,
Right,
for appreciating life more deeply.
right.
And I think that really spoke to the author, especially given his own brush with death.
So Terzani helped him shift his perspective from, like, why me,
Yeah.
to what can I learn from this?
Yes, it
That's
can.
a huge mental leap, especially when you're dealing with the physical and emotional fallout of something like aortic dissection.
Absolutely. Then there's Federico Fagan,
Okay.
a physicist known for his work on microprocessors.
Right.
His book, Irreducibly, meaning irreducible, dives into the nature of consciousness.
Okay.
Fagan argues that consciousness isn't just a product of the brain, but it's something fundamental. like something that exists beyond physical limitations.
Hold on. So we're talking about consciousness as something that can't be reduced to just like neurons firing.
Right.
Would you say that's kind of like a soul in a way?
That's a great question, and it's something the author grapples with, too.
Right.
Fagin's ideas provided him with a way to understand how his essence, his consciousness, could remain intact,
Right.
even after his body had undergone such a traumatic experience.
That must have been incredibly reassuring,
Yeah.
especially after feeling like he died on the operating table.
Right.
It's like even though his physical form was altered, his core self persisted.
Exactly. And then we have Pim van Lommel,
Okay.
a Dutch cardiologist who studied near-death experiences.
Okay.
His book, Consciência Oltre la Vida, translated as Consciousness Beyond Life, offers evidence suggesting that consciousness might continue even after the body dies.
Whoa. Okay, we're getting into some deep existential territory here.
Yeah.
But considering what he went through, I can see why he'd be drawn to those ideas.
Right.
Did these books, like, offer him a sense of peace about death?
Yeah.
Considering his father's passing?
Absolutely. And it's not about blind faith or ignoring science.
Right.
Remember, this is a guy with a scientific mind.
Right.
So he's looking for evidence, for a way to reconcile these seemingly opposing viewpoints.
That's what I find so intriguing about his journey. He's not choosing between science and spirituality. He's weaving them together to create a more holistic understanding of his experience.
Right. And speaking of holistic approaches, he also delves deeper into the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn,
Okay.
a leading figure in the mindfulness movement.
Uh-huh.
His book, Viver Momento per Momento, which translates to living moment by moment,
Okay.
reinforces the power of being present and accepting what is,
Right.
especially in the face of difficult emotions.
So Kabat-Zinn's work helped him apply mindfulness not just as like a theoretical concept,
Right.
but as a practical tool for navigating the ups and downs of recovery.
Exactly.
Did he read anything that addressed the idea of illness as a transformative experience?
That's where Jean Shinoda Bolin comes in.
Okay.
She's a Jungian analyst.
Mhm.
And her book, Close to the Bone,
Right.
reframes illness as a potential catalyst for spiritual growth.
Okay.
She sees it not just as something to endure,
Right.
but as an opportunity for profound change.
Okay, so now we've got 5 different authors, each offering a piece of the puzzle. Right. Terzani's acceptance of mortality, Fagin's concept of irreducible consciousness,
Right.
Van Lommel's exploration of near-death experiences,
Yeah.
Kabat-Zinn's emphasis on mindfulness, and Bolin's framing of illness as a spiritual initiative.
Right.
It's like he's pulling threads from all these different sources to weave together his own tapestry of meaning.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He's actively engaging with these ideas, not just passively absorbing them.
Right.
He's using them as tools to reconstruct his understanding of himself and the world.
Right.
And you know, what's really interesting is how this ties into the concept of ego death.
Ego death. You're going to have to break that down for me.
It's about letting go of the rigid sense of self,
Okay.
those limiting beliefs and attachments that hold us back.
Right.
And in a way, that's exactly what the author experienced on that operating table.
Right.
He felt like his old self died, allowing space for a new, more expansive sense of self to emerge.
So it's like he was forced to confront his own mortality.
Right.
And in the process, he shed the old skin of who he thought he was.
Exactly.
That makes sense, especially considering how he felt disconnected from his old self after the surgery.
It's a powerful transformation.
Yeah.
And through this process, he develops a new perspective on life.
Okay.
He talks about appreciating the present moment more deeply, feeling a greater sense of gratitude, and having a clearer sense of purpose.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering, did he ever feel overwhelmed by all these different perspectives?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just listening to you describe them, and my head is already spinning.
Yeah.
How did he manage to, like, synthesize all these complex ideas?
He talks about struggling with that,
Right.
especially with reconciling his scientific mind with his newfound spirituality.
Right.
But ultimately, he sees them not as opposing forces, but as complementary ways of understanding the world.
Okay.
It's like he's acknowledging that there's more to life than what science can explain,
Yeah.
that there's room for mystery and wonder.
And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It is.
To embrace both the rational and the intuitive, to find meaning in both the seen and the unseen.
Absolutely.
It's like he's expanding his capacity for understanding,
Right.
for experiencing life more fully.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, what did his recovery look like in practical terms? Did he struggle with the physical aspects as well?
Absolutely. We can't forget that he went through major surgery.
Right.
Remember, they replaced a portion of his aorta with a synthetic graft.
Right.
He talks about the pain, the fatigue, the limitations he faced as his body healed,
Oh, yeah.
and the realization that he would need ongoing medical care for the rest of his life.
That must have been a tough pill to swallow, going from feeling invincible to being acutely aware of his mortality.
It was a huge adjustment. But he also developed a newfound appreciation for his body and its resilience.
Right.
He started prioritizing his health, listening to his body's signals, and taking an active role in his own care.
So even though he couldn't erase what happened, he took control of what he could. That's incredibly empowering, isn't it?
It is, and it highlights another key takeaway from his story.
Yeah.
Even in the face of serious health challenges, we have choices.
Right.
We can choose how we respond, how we take care of ourselves, and how we find meaning in our experiences.
All right, so we've talked about his near-death experience, his deep dive into literature, his struggle with PTSD, his physical recovery.
Right.
But what about the hospital stay itself? Anything stand out to you about that part of the book?
Well, aside from the alien abduction part,
Right?
remember those strange occurrences he mentioned, like feeling the presence of the dead around his bed?
Oh, yeah.
That really stuck with me.
Right.
It highlights the psychological impact of trauma,
Right.
how our minds try to process these overwhelming experiences.
Yeah. And it circles back to that tension between the scientific and the spiritual.
Right.
Like, is it just his mind playing tricks on him?
Yeah.
Or is there something more to it? And then there are those encounters with other aortic dissection survivors. It's almost like fate brought them together.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Right.
There's comfort and strength in knowing that others have walked a similar path.
Right.
And sometimes those connections arise in the most unexpected places.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've explored the medical realities of aortic dissection,
Yeah.
the psychological and spiritual dimensions of the author's experience,
Right.
and the profound impact of the books he read. It's a truly remarkable story of survival and transformation.
It is.
And it raises some important questions for all of us.
It does.
Questions about the nature of consciousness,
Right.
the meaning of life and death, and the power of the human spirit to find healing and growth, even in the darkest of times.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the most important takeaways for our listener?
Yeah.
What can they learn from this man's incredible journey?
That's a great question.
I think one of the biggest takeaways is the power of mindfulness.
Mm.
You know, he was already dabbling in it before the dissection,
Right.
but it becomes his lifeline during recovery.
Yeah.
It's almost like training your mind to be resilient,
Right.
to find calm amidst the storm.
And what's great is that mindfulness isn't some esoteric practice reserved for monks on mountaintops or something.
Right.
It's something anyone can learn and benefit from,
Right, totally.
whether you're facing a health crisis,
Right.
dealing with everyday stress, or just looking to live more fully in the present moment.
Exactly. And then there's this whole idea of finding solace and guidance in books,
Yeah,
which is right up our alley, right?
absolutely.
I mean, we're doing a whole episode about it. But seriously, the way this guy dives deep into these specific authors
Right.
and their ideas, it's like he's creating his own personal curriculum for healing and transformation.
It highlights the transformative power of literature,
Yeah.
the way books can provide new perspectives,
Yeah.
validate our experiences,
Right.
and connect us to a larger conversation about the human condition.
Right.
It's like each book he read offered a different tool for navigating his journey, for making sense of what felt senseless.
And maybe that's another takeaway for our listener, that it's okay to seek out different perspectives.
Absolutely.
To explore various philosophies and spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
You don't have to find all the answers in one place or from one guru.
Absolutely. He found strength in the diversity of thought,
Right.
pulling wisdom from a physicist, a journalist, a cardiologist,
Right.
a mindfulness expert, and a Jungian analyst.
Yeah.
It shows that healing and growth can come from unexpected sources.
Right.
And sometimes it's about finding what resonates with you personally,
Right.
what helps you make sense of your own unique experience.
You know, it's also pretty inspiring to see how he refuses to be defined by his experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went through something incredibly traumatic,
Right.
but he doesn't let it break him.
Exactly.
Instead, he uses it as a catalyst for profound personal growth and transformation.
His story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit,
Yeah.
the power we have to choose how we respond to adversity.
Right.
He could easily succumb to fear, anger, or despair,
Right.
but instead, he chooses hope, curiosity, and a deep desire to understand not just what happened to him,
Right.
but what it means for his life moving forward.
And I think that's a message that resonates deeply, regardless of whether you've personally experienced a near-death experience
Right.
or a major health crisis.
Right.
It's about recognizing that challenges are an inevitable part of life.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to find ways to navigate them,
Right.
to learn from them, and to emerge from them stronger and more whole.
And sometimes that means letting go of old beliefs, old identities, old ways of seeing the world. Remember that idea of ego death we talked about?
Right,
It was like he had to shed a layer of himself
Yeah.
in order to make room for something new to emerge.
Right.
And what emerges is a more authentic, compassionate, and purpose-driven version of himself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we've gone through our own transformation, right? We
Yeah.
have explored the depths of human resilience, the power of the mind-body connection,
Right.
the search for meaning in the face of mortality, and the unexpected ways in which books can serve as guides and companions on our journeys.
It's been an incredible exploration,
It has.
and I hope it leaves our listener with a sense of awe at the mysteries of life,
Yeah.
a renewed appreciation for the fragility and preciousness of each moment, and a spark of inspiration to embrace their own potential for growth and transformation.
I love that. And if you're listening to this, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated most with you about the author's story?
Yeah.
What questions are you still pondering? What books have helped you navigate challenging times in your own life?
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about one man's experience.
Right.
It's about tapping into the shared human experience.
Right.
Recognizing that even in our darkest moments, there's potential for healing, growth, and a deeper understanding of who we truly are.
Beautifully said. I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Until next time.